see all of the things going on here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Michael Markowsky. Welcome to my studio. Today, I'm not going to be doing any painting because I'm going to be celebrating your artwork today. Most of the time, I'm sitting here doing all of the work here, and you guys are watching me. Now I get to turn things around, and I get to take a look at what you've been up to over the past few months. So this is really one of my favorite parts of these live streams that I've been doing over the past couple of years, because I get to see what the people on the other side of the camera, like yourself, have been up to. And it's really inspiring for me because it, for a brief moment in time, makes me feel like I'm not just talking to a little black circle on the other side of the room, but there's actually other people out there in the world who are as excited about art and painting and learning as I am. So let's get right to it. I'm super excited to celebrate with you guys today. I hope you have your Christmas sweaters on because it's that time of the year. And so let's where do I want to begin here? I thought I would just take actually, maybe even before I go to this, I just want to let you know where I'm finding all of your images. There's a private Facebook group just for people like yourself. If you're watching me for the first time, welcome. Join the Facebook group. Obviously, like and subscribe to this channel so you can see more of this. But if you want to find a really awesome community of like-minded artists, people at various different points of the learning spectrum, people who are just beginning or people who've been painting for a while, you couldn't do any better than joining this awesome group of people that has formed organically over the past year and a half. So this is all of the artwork is people who've taken photographs and uploaded it to this page. So the Facebook link is in the description below. I think it's the very first thing. And I thought I would just sort of begin here. This is a quote that Heidi posted to the Facebook group here. Just zoom in on this. From Gail Schur's book. Part of deliberately doing anything is creating an environment that supports it. The environment is stronger than will. You will not attain your goals until you surround yourself with people who are actively striving towards similar ones. I think that's a great concept to remember if you're trying to learn how to paint. Joining a community of people who are also trying to learn how to paint and get better at painting, as opposed to trying to do it all by yourself, especially if you're just watching me here, in your own space painting in a vacuum. Having other people in your community, maybe they're not people who live right next door or down the street, but they're on the other side of the planet. You have people that have been going through the same sorts of challenges, maybe struggles, and ultimately victories as you have, and those great breakthroughs, and being able to share them with people who understand. It's great being able to share your work with your friends and family, and they're like, great, way to go. But I think having other people, that's why art school is such a fantastic thing, right? That's why I love teaching at art school as well as teaching here online, is because you can see the community that forms. So speaking of which, there's a number of new people that have just joined recently. And I know Leslie's been painting along with us for a couple of months, but I just thought, it's really cool to kind of go back and look at some of these early paintings. A few of these are videos that I posted, 5 years ago that she's painted. So I love those, even before I started doing the live streams. And here's Sandy's. Sandy, she's got a few other ones we'll take a look at here towards the end of the episode, because she's been really busy. But some of you may remember what it was like to do some of these very early exercises. And what's really cool is Sandy's also done a few time lapses showing the creation of some of these artworks. Really exciting to kind of go back and look at them. Here's Kathy's. She says, "This is one of the first paintings I've ever made. Thank you for your teachings, Michael. That is so exciting, and what a great job. If this is one of your first paintings, oh my goodness, Kathy, you are off to a great start here. And speaking of which, here's Heidi. You know, she posts, I thought, I might have even looked at this last feedback episode, but I just, you know, especially since we just looked at a Matisse painting by another former student, or current student, new student. Here we have Heidi posted, this is the painting she made back in 2020, right? Over a year ago, and here's some of the early artwork that she did. And isn't that exciting? And then we look at some of the more recent work she's done, and I want to come back. I want to start with some of these here, because these are paintings that she did and she posted over the past maybe month, and I think we talked about some of these in the most recent feedback episode. So she did this, and I gave her a little bit of advice on how potentially you could improve this. Now the photo isn't quite, you know, the color's a little bit different, but she added a whole bunch of leaves down here just to kind of pull that foreground, I guess, or for you guys, you'll be pushing the foreground closer to the viewer, which I think was a really great idea. And so she did another one here. She posted, this is the Vincent van Gogh's Cafe Terrace at night. And I think I gave some advice about maybe brightening this area up here and putting a little bit of light spilling out here. And again, the photo's a little bit more on the yellow side. We could adjust that. But and the reason why I'm showing this is not only, you know, our artists growing, but one of the things that you can do based upon the feedback from me during these episodes is go back and add and rework and improve some of the paintings that you've already created. So here, we'll just look at a few more here from Heidi. Here's another one. And what did she says? Made the blue rock in the foreground less obvious. Okay, so there's this blue rock. It just made it a little more subtle. I have a sneeze that is right about to burst. That is really cool. I like how you did that. That definitely, you know, when I looking at that was sat kind of almost strangely like a stuffed animal or something floating in the foreground, and now it's a little bit more integrated. That's awesome. And then here with the Van Gogh's Potato Eaters, I think I suggested darkening the figure in the foreground just to pull the figure a little bit closer towards us. And she followed some advice, and that looks awesome. It definitely does push the other figures a little bit further back, and then this figure now comes more forward in the composition. So I love seeing people who listen to my advice and who take it and you know, do a little bit of additions, small changes to their paintings to make them, in my opinion, a little bit better. And I think that's mostly what everyone wants to do, right? Everyone wants to make better paintings, to make paintings that feel more satisfying when you look at them. So we're going to do that throughout today's episode. Is I'm going to try to help people get a little bit better. And when you get a little bit better, you feel more confident, you feel more like you're excited to paint, and you feel a little bit more fearless to try new, different things. So let's keep on going here. I just thought this was kind of funny. This is from the most recent feedback episode. Paula took a picture of it, of me talking, and then did this this watercolor during the feedback episode, and we have here me with a deer combined together, which I think is pretty funny. So that's great. That's fantastic. That's really, really cool. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to begin by looking at artwork from where we left off last time. So the most recent paintings that you guys did that we have yet to take a look at are the artworks by Grandma Moses, and Grandma Moses, I think, is one of the most inspiring artists throughout history, because she only began painting seriously in her late 70s, I think. And so she's always been brought out as an example of someone that you can teach old dogs new tricks, right? This idea like, well, I don't know, I'm too old. I'm too old to learn a new language, to start going to the gym, or pick up violin, or go back to school, or pick up painting. Grandma Moses is a perfect example of someone who started late and became globally famous for doing so. So here's Deborah's version of the sugaring off painting, and she added Waldo striding through the middle of the picture here. Here's Eleanor's version of the painting. Fantastic. And Paula's version of it as well. And as always, Paula, I always find it so fascinating that you orient the picture vertically like this, as opposed to, you take a horizontal picture, you make it vertical. You take our vertical paintings and you make them horizontal. So, I mean, that's a great challenge. That is, in all seriousness, that is really tricky to pull off. And so it's always really exciting for me to see how you manage to do that. So let's just kind of look back at these again, and then I'll just sort of zoom in on a few of these and see if there's any constructive criticism I can give here. First of all, I love that Deborah signed the painting Grandma Deb instead of Grandma Moses. I love that. That's pretty funny. What could we say? I mean, I don't know. This looks pretty good. This, just for me personally, doing this Grandma Moses painting was very surprising, because I think Grandma Moses, she's within pop culture certainly one of the most famous artists in American history, but is not really embraced by the art intelligentsia, like the gatekeepers who let certain artists become, famous, critically recognized, right? And because she's sort of considered, quote unquote, to be an outsider artist, not a classically trained academic artist who's gone through the necessary process to become embraced by the smart people in the art world. And yet, painting the Grandma Moses painting, I was struck by how complex her work actually is, how much detail is in it, how much skill is really honestly required to pull off a painting like this. There's a lot of very well-known professional artists that I think would really struggle trying to paint this painting. And I think, Deborah, you've done a great job doing this. Doing all those little trees, getting the foreground and background, having the background recede like that, using the warm and cool colors. Now, I know Grandma Moses didn't necessarily approach the painting in that way, because she probably didn't even know about some of those concepts. But we tried to incorporate a little bit of that into our painting, and this has been pulled off fantastic, really good. And especially, we did this on a fairly small canvas, right? That turned out really great. Great job, Deborah. I don't have anything to say. I love the Where's Waldo in here. And then I will look at Eleanor's. Wow, that is great. It looks like you used one of the Posca pens or acrylic pens to do a lot of this line work, which is what I did, because boy oh boy, it's time consuming, right? And if you were to try to paint it all by hand like Grandma Moses did, that requires a lot of brush control. Really cool. This turned out great. It looks a lot like Grandma Moses's paintings, right? All these little figures in there. Drawing people and painting people is not easy. That's why I'd say, like, Grandma Moses, she did a great job. I love the color in this one here, Paula. Wow. All these little figures. These are great. I love the layering of colors that you got in here, too. Really good job. Especially with these trees. Painting all those trees with a brush. is tricky, and these are little details, because I think you're painting in a sketchbook when you do these. So I'm very, very impressed. I don't have anything I think I can add to our Grandma Moses paintings here, so I'm just going to move forward. But great work, everyone. Awesome. Really excited. This is how we're beginning on such a strong point here. So the next artist that we're going to be talking about is our Tarsila do Amaral, the famous Brazilian artist. And we didn't actually do this painting here, Maria, but this is also one of Tarsila's most famous artworks as well. I think this is in the Museum of Modern Art in New York, I think. Great job, Maria. I love this one. I certainly appreciate it when we're focusing on an artist, and you guys you're like, I'm not sure about doing that painting, but there's some of her other paintings I really like, and other people, you guys choose different paintings by the same artist and work on them maybe while I'm working on a different painting by that same artist. I think that's awesome. Similarly here, Eleanor did this painting here. I love Tarsila's other landscape paintings. I think she was a great artist, and I love her. There's a kind of a cubist approach to all these sort of forms, and Eleanor, you did a great job here. Same here with Maria, like getting those gradations of values from light to dark in all of these paintings is not easy. Great job. So this is the actual painting that we did, or this is Gail's version of the Tarsila do Amaral painting that we did here. And that looks great. Yeah, I love this one. Great job. All the outlining too turned out really well. Here's Josh's version of the painting. Wow. In fact, let's just take a quick spin through all of these. Okay, so yeah, Gail's version. Is there anything I can add to this? Yeah, I mean, I think it turned out really well. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember the original. It's been a few months since we did this painting. But I do think that I don't remember that really dark black outline that you've put on around the figure, Gail. Now, I mean, I guess you could say, well, maybe you could use a different color, maybe like a skin tone, but just less white in it, so kind of like a brown or an orange, and outline it. That might bring it a little bit closer back to the original. I don't mind the dark black outline. I mean, the reason I say that is because it's the only thing that's outlined. There's not a lot of things in this picture to begin with, but the other way to go about it would maybe to outline the rest of the painting, outline the cactus, outline the sun, which I actually think is not supposed to be the sun, but it's a flower growing out of the cactus. But it's interesting that it appears, I think most 99% of people, if you walk down the street, would say it's a sun, but it's actually the flower from the cactus. But I don't mind that. I think it turned out pretty good. This is Josh's. This is great, Josh. I might almost say the exact opposite, Josh, it might be nice to have a little bit more of a darker edge around maybe one side of the figure, like right here and on the back side and on the back side of this arm, and between some of these fingers and toes to act like shadows as if there's light hitting the figure. Because right now it's almost like we have a lot of middle values. We don't really have a bright highlight, but we also do not have any dark shadows. And Tarsila did use a lot of middle range values, but I think adding just a little bit of darkness, like I think here's Maria's version here, where we have a little bit more of these darker oranges around parts of the figure, and I think that helps. Again, this is subjective. I'm sure other people would feel different and have different ideas about that. This is cool. Here, so this is, if this one, Maria. So Maria did 2 of them, I guess, right? Huh. So I think this is the second one. That's the first one, second one. I can't remember the Facebook post about why there was a second one. I do think the second one is an improvement. It's interesting. I guess the arm is missing here that her chin is leaning on. This one's a little bit darker. The greens are much darker. Here it's a little bit brighter, and I think you also did a better job with the figure and getting those variations in value from light to dark, and doing it. You know, there's not a lot of, you go from pretty light to pretty dark within the space of just a few millimeters, which is amazing. I think this one did turn out really well. And then we're just in here with Paula's this ballet dancer who's jumping into the composition right in front of the figure that's on the hill there, which is very funny. I would love to hear what your reasoning or your thoughts were behind this, because it definitely makes for a very, very interesting composition. I'm curious as to why this figure's body doesn't kind of come all the way out here. Like, we see one of the things that is quite unique about the way Tarsila de Amaral painted is we often have the human body is distorted in some way, so some parts are bigger than others. So right now everything is all the same size. Like, the feet are about the same size as the head, which is very different than the original. So part of me kind of wants to see maybe the rest of the body here, like giving the figure like a big bottom, because in some ways it looks like this figure is kind of growing out of, you know, like this neck is coming out of her neck, and this hand is emerging from the top of her head, and that these legs are coming out of her armpit or something. There's a little bit of a I mean, I think there's something awesome and super weird about this painting, and whenever I say weird, I mean that in the best way, because I think allowing the weirdness of your art to come out is really the first true step to forming an independent, unique style. So I certainly don't want to discourage that. I just think that I often, when I'm looking at paintings like this, think about if you have 2 figures that are overlapping one another, so there can be confusion as to whose legs are whose. So but it is definitely pretty cool. So let's continue on here. We're going to continue with looking at artists from Brazil here. So the next artist that we looked at was Lydia Clark, who I think is, as I mentioned during that episode, is an artist that is growing in popularity. If you want to invest in some art, I would invest in her work, because I think she'll only get more and more well-known as time passes, and her contributions to art will become more and more will be more recognized than they already are, but her influence will continue to grow. So maybe let's go from the bottom up this time. So we'll just look at here's these together. Here's Paula's, Maria's, May's, and here's Paula's with both of them together. And here's Susan's, Maria's, and Eleanor's. Very cool. Okay. Let me just... Okay. So, Eleanor's here. I think this turned out really good. So, what I did for this painting is to paint it with tape, right? So, I used tape to get really nice, sharp edges. It looks like Eleanor's hand painted all of these cubes, which is not easy. We did something very similar to this when we did the Pied Mondrian paintings just last week or so. It's all a blur, and it's really tricky to do all of that line work all by hand. Although it doesn't really take that much longer than using tape. I think people think, oh, well, you're going to put a bit of tape on there, get a nice bunch of clean lines, and you'll be done in 20 minutes. If you really want to do it well, it takes a little bit longer than 20 minutes. So I think this turned out really well. There's a little bit of distortion in here where we've got some of these lines appear to be sort of curving. And maybe the canvas itself is not quite straight. I'm not sure. I don't mind that. In fact, it's something I think... I know a few... I used to work for an artist who did grids, but then would kind of distort the grid a little bit. So I certainly appreciate that can be an effective strategy for creating really interesting compositions, because I always think compositions, the best paintings are always a little bit unbalanced. Wallpaper is perfectly balanced, right? Because it's almost, you want it to become wallpaper and to kind of fade into the background. So it doesn't matter how busy it is, if it's got a pattern on it, it just sort of disappears, right? The moment that pattern starts to get a little bit broken, then it keeps attracting your attention. So I always think paintings want to have a little bit of asymmetry to them, to be a little bit unbalanced, so that, you know, you look at it and then you're like, what? I got to take another look at that. That's, you know, so it sucks our attention in, right? Sometimes artists use mistakes in order to grab your attention for just that extra second. In the same sort of way, I think, you know, advertisers add something just a little bit weird, or use a different word so that it acts like a little bit of that earworm that you're like, what? Why did they just? I think they said that word wrong. And I think advertisers are very, you know, sophisticated these days to do all that kind of stuff deliberately, whereas in the past it would just be a mistake. I think that happens less and less, and more deliberately. Anyway, so that kind of distortion, I think, is actually kind of cool. Here's Maria's. She combined the Elijah Clark with Pierre Mondrian, or Elijah Clark and Pierre Mondrian had a baby. I called it the chair. And so this looks like a chair that's sort of, I'm assuming that's what you mean. Like there's like this chair that's folding out of the picture, and then we can kind of sit down on the chair inside of the painting in some way. That is pretty funny. That is cool. I like that. You know, is it different than, it's different than both Pierre Mondrian's paintings, certainly, and also different than the Elijah Clark painting, because she didn't really use, well, she did use these dark lines, but not in these series of grid paintings, because she used them in the next set, right? That is really, you know, it's looking at these ones by Paula. You know, we'll just stay with this one on the left for this moment. That looks really great. It also looks like you've layered that paint. I like how glossy it looks. It almost looks like stained glass or something, the way that that's done. That is really cool. I like that. Huh. And it's, you know, what's interesting, Paula, is often you're working on these in your sketchbook, and then you do some larger paintings of your own on canvas, often with oil paint. It'd be really interesting to see some of these done on canvas, or just canvas board like that I've been using. I just see in the comments Maria says, "Oh, I hate this chair thing that I did." Oh, I don't know. I think it's kind of cool. I mean, I would say there is an odd perspective. Like, there's a few different ways I could see this image. One is that this is the back of the chair, and this is the seat of the chair, and this is the top of the seat, so that we can kind of see someone's legs, like, sitting off here. Like we're looking at a park bench, and somebody could be sitting on the park bench this way. And then the other way that I see it is this is the back and this is the seat, but this is the underside of the seat, like at a, you know, the chairs that are in movie theaters or football stadiums or whatever that flip up, and this is sort of the seat that's sitting up, and somebody would have to kind of come down, pull that seat down to sit on it. Either way, I think it's certainly really weird, and I love that at some point while you're working on this painting, Maria, you decided to, you know, let's throw this diagonal in here and turn it into a chair. I mean, I start thinking, what if it was actually a piece of cardboard or paper that is actually physically coming out into our space? Maybe that's something to think about for another painting, right? Here's Susan's painting here. Wow. So this one is done with tape. And there's a lot. This would have taken a long time, Susan. I have a great deal of appreciation for doing, because I also use tape to do my version of this painting. And that tape is, you know, it takes time to do all of these different lines, because it's not just one or two quick things of tape. You know, all of these vertical lines, there's many different tapes coming on and off and overlapping, and it becomes quite hard to remember what goes where or what those colors are going to look like until you peel the tape off. So there is a little bit of paint bleeding under the tape in some places, you know, and there's also these little gaps. Does it bother me? I don't know. Does it bother you, Susan? Like, I mean, it's all part of the learning process, and the more and more of these kind of things you do and use that technique, the better and better you get at it. That's why there are a number of very famous contemporary artists who use tape for their paintings, and if you see them in person, it's like, wow, every line is perfect. They're super sharp, and it looks gorgeous up close. But that comes from years of practice and getting better, just as you get better at any technique, right? So you have to start somewhere, and I think this is a great place to learn some of these basic techniques, and as you become a great artist, you become a master, just like Elijah Clark, by practicing the basics and getting better and better at them. I love it. Really cool. I mean, I love the color palette that Elijah Clark used in this painting. Let's look at the staircase painting that Elijah Clark also did. Here's May's version of it. First of all, I love this. I love the original painting. I think, May, you've done an outstanding job here. That looks really, really nice. I mean, you really captured, like, even, you know, it's funny, like, some of these areas where the paint is not totally solid, there's a little bit of transparency. We see some of the brush strokes. There are some artists like Pierre Mondrian who wanted a much more solid, unified colors and less brushstrokey kind of stuff. And then there's some artists like Elijah Clark, like a lot of other artists, who not only don't mind seeing the brushstrokes, that they go out of the way to emphasize them. So I think this painting turned out really nice. It looks very, very close to the original. It looks really quite professional. Really well done. That's excellent. Here's Maria's. It looks like Maria also did another kind of innovated from in this painting as well. Huh. So this is a little bit closer. So, okay, I see Elijah Clark and Henri Matisse together. I like these kind of mashups that you're doing. That's really cool, Maria. Although I do think Elijah Clark also did, she did a number of versions of this staircase, of which, you know, like the one that May did here and the one that I did, I think is the final iteration of that staircase motif series of paintings she did. But I think she did one that's not too far off from this. But I do appreciate it. It's funny, I didn't look at the title until just now, but I was like, yeah, there is a very Matisse-like quality even just that blue that Matisse used a lot, particularly in his late career. Very cool. I think that's an awesome idea, is to take some liberties and to play a little bit with the painting. Awesome. Really, really fun. That's really cool. And here's Paula's version. Wow. Even wilder. So it's interesting because, you know, Paula doesn't use the templates, just draws them right out in her sketchbook and paints them. And so we do lose a little bit of the accuracy from, you know, using the template, which is traced directly from the original image. Obviously, we're going to get almost a quote-unquote perfect composition, at least compared to the original. So here, Paula's drawing it all out, and there's going to be some differences that are going to just naturally appear. And what I think is most exciting is how Paula just sort of embraces those differences and allows these paintings to start taking on their own lives and breathing on their own, and that's really cool. I mean, I think Elijah, you know, some of these lines continue to, they wouldn't be broken like this, the way that these are just sort of isolated shapes like that. But again, I don't mind that at all. It just ends up becoming more and more of its own unique thing. That's great. These are really cool. I really don't have that many comments to say about these. Okay, so turning my heater down here. Okay, so next we're going to look at Thomas Cole, who was the central figure in the Hudson River School, which was a very important art movement in American history, mostly focused on landscape painting. And we are going to do a number of other paintings by other artists like Albert Bierstadt in the new year, because I'm a big fan of the Hudson River School of painting, and they definitely pose great challenges for anyone wanting to learn how to do landscape painting in particular. But you know, all of the techniques that are used in these types of paintings are applicable to whatever kind of style of art you want to do. So I think Les just posted this. This is you know, this is a detail of the original painting. And what did he say? Is this the artist poking fun at the viewer? I'm not sure, but it is. I don't know if he's poking fun at the viewer, but he painted himself into the painting, making the painting. And often artists, especially if you're making a huge painting, they'll sneak little details in there, sometimes to poke fun at things, like you're saying, at the viewer, but often as it's, you know, like in movies they call it like Easter eggs, where there's little details hidden in the background of the movie. You know, maybe it's the license plates or the name badges on a police officer, or on an envelope sitting on a table, or a poster in the back of someone's bedroom, and they're all based on, you know, maybe members of the crew or things that inspired the original movie, etc. So artists have been doing that kind of thing for hundreds, and all the way back to, like, in Pompeii, there's examples of artists doing little things in mosaics that are thought to be sort of little like Easter eggs. They're like little tiny details that are maybe only the artist and the artist's couple of buddies know about, and they can go in and be like, by the way, you see that, take another look at the woman bathing in the painting back there. And they're like, what? I don't see, like, oh, do you see the bow in her hair? Just like my wife. My wife always wears a bow like that. And they're like, oh, you did it. You snuck the bow into a painting. I knew. I bet you $10 that you wouldn't be able to fit a blue bow, or, you know, something kind of funny like that. And why not? If you're working on a painting for months and months, you got to keep yourself entertained, right? Anyway, so let's move on here. Maria's version of this painting. I think this turned out great, and the first thing that really catches my eye, Maria, with this is this beautiful horizon, like that peachy color of the light, right? Oof, that is gorgeous, and that purple in the clouds. It really gives that, you know, it reminds me, not only does it look sort of like, you know, a sunset or sunrise, but it also gives, you know, sometimes that the color of the sky just after it's rained, right? It has just like this freshness to it. So I really like that. The one thing I would say is that peach color, one might confuse it with this brown here, because brown and peach are almost the same, just brown's got a little bit of blue in it, right? So it almost sort of looks like this is also part of the horizon, and then you're like, oh no, that's the hill in behind. So I probably would have just darkened that just a little bit, this the hillside here, that brown. I mean, again, tiny nitpicking kind of stuff. The other thing, I probably would put a little bit of warm blue into the water just to pull it a little bit closer to us. But otherwise, it looks fantastic. I love the way that you've done the rain and the sky. Really nice painting. And this is a difficult paint. This is one of the great paintings in American history. And to even just attempt it is awesome. I'm so proud of you guys. Here's Paula's version. Wow, again, Paula, you're always surprising me doing this painting vertically as opposed to on a horizontal plane or horizontal format. And the way that you've done these trees, it's so wild. I think what would be nice is to have a little bit more separation between, because right now it's hard to tell that this is, we're on a really high promontory, like cliff, looking down on the hill or the water below, and this hillside much further away. So it's not quite as clear what is happening in this painting, and maybe that's because it looks like we've got a lot of cold blue or green in the foreground, and then this here is a little bit warmer. So I would say if we almost inverted some of these colors, but it still kept some of the cool green, but we had some white in it, and then kept some of the warm green, but just tried to have as little white in there as possible, I think we'd have a little bit more depth, and to try to create a little bit more of not only the scale, but that we're at a higher altitude. Right, again, this is a tricky painting, really tricky painting. Wow, and here's Shelley's version of the same painting, right? So I think you can see here now we feel like we're higher up looking down on this, right? That we really feel like we're above, and that we're seeing the top of this river as it kind of cuts through the landscape. Really nice. I like how dark you allowed this painting to go. A lot of people, including myself, quite frankly, often get really scared of taking a painting really dark, and you allowed the painting to get dark, and it's generally 9 times out of 10 makes a huge improvement. What could I say? Yeah, I don't. I mean, I guess there is maybe the horizon line. Looks like it sort of slopes down in behind here. So I almost want to see, and I don't, it's obviously the landscape can do that. I just feel like we want to have a little bit of something here, either light from behind here or another hill in behind this. And if you recall, like when I was making that painting, I ran into a similar kind of thing as well. And I think what I ended up doing is building my foreground kind of and turned it, made it a little bit higher so that there wasn't the potential for these things to just intersect and come into one, that there is a clear delineation that this cliffside is in front of the other one. And I know Thomas Cole did not do that, but again, he's one of the greatest artists in human history, and his canvas was a gigantic canvas, and he was able to pull stuff like that off. So I think Shelley really tried to go back to what Thomas Cole did. I mean, by all means, a great painting, better than most artists are capable of. And this is a tricky painting, right? So great learning experience for sure. Let's push on here. We're going to look at Diego Rivera's paintings. There's a couple people that also did, I think in the Dropbox folder I posted an image of a young girl that he also painted. So it looks like Paula and Joshua did versions of that. Although this one looks a lot more like the boy. So I'm not sure what, because I think the girl looked a little bit like this, if I recall, that Paula did here. That looks really good though, Paula. I love the outfit. I love the colors. Again, your eyeball, you drew this just without any assistance, just drawing what you saw in the downloads folder. So really impressive. You know, I guess I could see maybe the nose is a little bit white, but it does look like you're, you know, taking some creative license with the portrait. Like I would consider maybe, because maybe just having a bit more of your skin tone and just putting a bit of that on here so it's not quite as like lightly colored. I mean, noses are going to be a little bit lighter than the rest of the face because they're usually catching more light. Usually, I say, not always, but often because they're sticking out a little bit further, they tend to catch more light, so they do tend to be a little bit lighter. But they can also, for the very same reason, be a little bit darker because they're, especially if light is coming in from the side, they might have a shadow, right? So they can both be lighter and darker than the rest of the face. But I think we just want to have maybe a little bit more nuance there. Again, I'm just nitpicking just to see if I can help. And I would say almost the opposite here, Joshua, is that this nose is almost too subtle. That I think we need to have a little bit more darkness and potentially a little bit of a highlight somewhere on that nose just to pop it forward. Otherwise it sort of looks like, you know, the face of a pug, you know, a little dog that has a nose that's squished. So adding a little bit of extra value, maybe it's underneath the nose, deciding where the light's going to come, and maybe put a little bit of light on one side here. Like we can see, so Gales did a fantastic job of this. So this is the boy that Diego Rivera did. This is the one that I did during this episode. This looks fantastic. But you can see the way, and this is pretty close to the way Diego Rivera did it, the nose is a little bit darker, and the cheeks are catching some light, and he's kind of outlined it. And so we've got kind of darker outlines, lighter area in the middle, lighter cheeks, and that just helps kind of give a little bit more of volume to the nose. That looks really good. This is a great painting, Gail. That is pretty cool. I'm really proud of you for that. That one is really nice. I really enjoyed painting this painting too. This one's, I don't know, we did this 2 or 3 months ago, and it's sitting upstairs in a frame in our living room because I'm pretty happy with the way that I did this version of the painting. This looks great as well, Heidi. Wow, I like this. This is acrylic, right? I see it almost looks like watercolor a little bit, or the way it's painted, this texture that we see here. And also there's almost looks like a little bit of a tear, oops, on the cheek. you know, not an easy painting to do. It was a fun painting to do, but it was not an easy painting. And so I suspect a little bit of what I'm seeing here is just the reflections of light in the photograph. I probably bet that it looks a little bit different in person. I'm trying to... I don't remember the original. I almost feel like I want to see a little more color in the eyes, on not on the whites of the eyes, but in the, you know, the irises. You know, the iris, you have your pupils, the dark part. The iris is the part of your eyes that are colored. And I would almost and I can't, maybe Diego didn't put any color on those eyes, but I almost feel like I want to see a bit of brown or green on those eyes. And again, mine's upstairs, I can't even go see it, but otherwise a really great job. Really, really nice. You know, and actually the way that it's painted, the tiles remind me a lot of tiles, just like, you know, that one might see anywhere, you know, really, especially like if on like floors. You know, it just makes me think of like the tiles in like old kitchens, the way they sort of wear in this particular kind of way. I think that the way that you paint it really captures that really well. And here's Maria's. Great. It's interesting, all the texture that we see here. It almost, I do wonder if maybe Maria, did you paint over another painting with this painting? I wonder where it's such, that texture is certainly unique. But really cool. I do this little boy, though, there's something about his face that is making him look a little bit older, and almost like a 25-year-old fellow. And I think it might be that the face is a little bit more square and the jaw is a little bit more less round, and the squarer that jaw is, the more older and more kind of masculine it's going to make this person. Whereas you know, children tend to have softer features, rounder faces, bigger eyes. So maybe it's also the eyes being a little bit smaller, the chin being a little bit, it just makes him just look a little bit older. And all of a sudden, instead of looking like this little boy who's dressed up like an older fellow, he now looks like, you know, a 20-something-year-old guy. Again, it's not a problem necessarily, but it's just, I think it's worth just thinking about those differences. I did do a whole episode. I did several episodes actually in my drawing course, which is free. It's here on YouTube. I did some episodes on drawing bodies of people of different ages, like children and seniors. And I did one on, I think, drawing children's faces. It's been a year and a half or more since I did those episodes. But if you wanted to kind of really look more specifically in some of the things I'm talking about, that info is there. Again, that's here on YouTube. I think it's probably in the video description below here. So we'll just move lastly for the last Diego Rivera piece here to Paula's. That is so funny and so cool. So it's interesting too that the eyes, this one, the face is, I feel like the original is sort of slightly turned. Which direction? It was this direction, kind of like that. And looking at us now, the head is straight looking right at us. And it's funny, like this little bit of green that you put around the eyes also gives it a kind of an intensity. It's almost like this little boy was wearing sunglasses, and that part of his eyes haven't gotten quite as much sun and not quite as dark. Really cool. Yeah, what am I going to say? These are a great job, everybody. I'm going to keep on going ahead here. I'm going to just... only one person attempted to do this painting, probably because it took me 8 hours to paint my version. of it. I think it was 8 hours or 6, 7 hours. I think I worked on this painting. So probably a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm not gonna, that's ridiculous. So it doesn't surprise me that Paula was the only one, because Paula's watching every episode beginning to end. But this is definitely, I think I would, if I painted this same painting again, I could probably do it in half the time and do a better job of it. And that's, you know, that's just the way that, you know, when you're making art, you often, every painting is a learning experience, and you learn as you're painting, and which is a good thing, right? And if you, as you're painting it, have these moments of like, oh, now I see, now I get it. You know what? I probably should have done this first. And yeah, it's kind of frustrating to realize in the moment, you know, because you're thinking like, well, it would be really nice if I had known this a couple of hours ago. But just realizing that is a victory, is a major accomplishment, because all of those little things that you learn along the way, you apply to the next painting, right? But anyway, to go to this one here, Paula, I think you did a great job. I really like how this one turned out. I like the color. You know, you nailed everything in here, and the fact that you did this without using an outline or a template is fantastic, and just goes to show how much better you're getting painting to painting to painting. So let's continue forward here. Then the next painting that we did after that was Pablo Picasso's Dove for International Peace Day. And so let's just look at it here. We got Eleanor, Heidi did there, because we did 2 paintings, 2 of these doves, and Paula put them all together on one canvas here. And that is interesting how this is done, Eleanor. It's almost like you did is that embossed? I wonder how you did that. If this was a piece of paper that already was embossed, or what's the opposite of embossing? But, or I don't know if this is a found piece of paper, or you pressed it like that, or no, it's just a piece of, is that just a piece of canvas that's been cut out and stuck on a paper, or some kind of mat board or something? Oh, I thought it was like paper that had been pressed, which if you wet paper and you put like a block of metal or something in it, it will push down into the surface and then create, you know, depression in the paper. That's just an optical illusion. It's funny, I was kept looking down here, and then I look up here and I'm like, oh, there's the shadow. Oh, duh, obviously. So, what do I want to say about this? Oh, I see in the comments, Heidi says this is acrylics on mixed media paper. That makes some sense. That texture doesn't look like canvas. That's why I was like, there's something going on there. Okay, so let's. This turned out really good. I really like this. You know, it's interesting working on canvas like that and then cutting it out, and you have such a different look. And it's so cleanly done. Really nice. The only thing I would say, I love all of these marks here. These looks like, are those pencil marks? The original did have some color in there. I am tempted to recommend having a little bit of, I don't mind that on here. I think it's just down under here where, because I think one of this is like a tree branch, and there's the feet of the dove that they're clenching, like the little claws that are clenching that stick, and that's lost here, and it just sort of now looks like a little bit of scribbles. So even if we just took the black pen or whatever Posca pen or Sharpie that you're using and just did you know, a few of these lines, so it appears like those feet are still there clutching, and you could keep this gray pencil line in there, but you know, again, I think it looks pretty good. I love that you added this little piece thing down there. Yeah, so here's what we're talking about. Here's Heidi's version. That's great. I love the way you signed it with that dry brush. Really nice. I see a few like corrections that you've done using, you know, trying to probably mix the same paint you use in the background. I actually don't mind that. I think it adds something kind of neat to the painting. You know, there's definitely two minds about that kind of thing. Like, some people really want it, if you make a quote-unquote mistake, you try to fix it so that the mistake is invisible and as if it was never there and we don't notice it. And then there's a whole other train or almost philosophy when it comes to that, is to either not hide the mistake at all, or to allow a hint of it, so that we can almost, and some artists do this deliberately, maybe not even covering up a mistake, just painting a color like that to give us the impression that it was worked and that there's some kind of labor involved. And we talked to, what artist was it, Picasso, that we talked about that? I think it was probably Picasso, because Picasso does that kind of stuff all the time. Is that he might begin with a very solid composition in mind and deliberately just build up a surface to make it look like he worked on it for a long time, even though he did it in 20 minutes kind of thing. Because he knows that will probably make it seem more valuable to people if they think he spent longer on it as opposed to just dashing it off, right? I think this turned out really great. I'm really pleased with the way that one looks. And the other one that Heidi did, likewise, is really great. Here, it looks like we see a little bit more of these like pencil lines and stuff in there. I don't mind that. Again, Picasso, this is, the original image is a lithograph that Picasso probably did with like a grease pen on some sort of like metallic surface that they used, and then etched those marks out and then made prints based on it. So it's, the only way to do that with paint would be to have like a really long paintbrush dipped in paint and to get those really nice flowing lines, which is that's very tricky to do. It's like basically a sign painter's technique. So we're gonna get a little bit of these uneven lines, and I had them in my painting as well. As I always say, like, paintings that are really, that appear very simple are often the hardest paintings to do, because there's not a lot there, right? So the less that's there, the more that can kind of go wrong, right? Like if you're making a steak and it's just a steak, and you're not going to load it up with all sorts of sauces and mushrooms and sides while the pressure's on. It's got to be a perfectly cooked steak, and maybe it's just got the exact amount of salts and maybe a little bit of cracked pepper on there, and that's it, right? Well, then there's nothing hiding the impossible imperfections in the way it was cooked. I'm a vegetarian. I don't know why I always use steak. I guess because everyone knows it's probably more common to know what a meat tastes like for most people, right? And here's Paula's. I love that, Paula, you have these two birds together in one picture. They look pretty good. And it's the way that you sign this here, Picasso's name sort of in this, like a label almost on the bottom, is kind of funny to me as well. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything I can add here. Heidi says the doves were sketched out and completed in class live, so it's a bit rough. And Lolly says, that's great, Heidi. I think you've done an amazing job. Yeah, I mean, I think they turn out really great. I think all of these turn out really great. Okay, so let's look at our next great master here. Maybe let's start at the bottom and work our way up here. Not sure the difference between those. I'm just zooming in on some of these here. Wow. Huh. There's a lot of these. These are great. Okay, so our next artist is Tamara de Lempicka, and again, another one of my favorite artists, and I think overall a kind of an underrated artist, even though I think a lot of people have seen this image reproduced. I think most people have only ever seen this image of hers, but she did a lot of other awesome paintings, and is sort of seen as the main artist of the Art Deco period. These are great. Everyone's a little bit different. Okay, so let's start at the bottom and work our way up this time. So here's Vanya's version. This turned out really great. What could I say about this? I mean, I think the one thing is maybe having just a little bit darker values in a few places, like maybe around some of her fingers in this kind of scarf, like not being afraid to go just that little bit darker, like around her bonnet. And I mean, again, small little kind of thing, but it's often one of those things that most of us are afraid to do, is to go just that little bit darker, because we've got a lot of these nice gray values in here, and I think that's awesome. A lot of that turned out really well. I think it's just pushing it just that last little bit. Yeah, but otherwise that looks great, Vanya. I'm quite impressed. Let's look. Paula's did these. So I think this is the first version Paula did, and then she added Diego Rivera's to the boy and the girl, as if they're riding around with Tamara's self-portrait in this car here, which is hilarious. I love that. That is very, very funny. I think just if we look at the first version here, because I think really the only difference is just the insertion of those children. I think it's, again, Paula has taken a vertical painting and turned it into a horizontal formatted painting. So that means then you have a lot more space in the empty seat of the car, or in the front seat or back seat. So it does make sense why she put these other figures into the empty space. It is a little bit it's a little bit unclear as to, I mean, how they're sitting there. Like, somebody might be sitting on top of the chair, which is very unsafe. But that's okay, right, for painting, to have a little bit of fun like that. You know, I would say, again, you know, going a little bit darker, you know, on her scarf, inside some of these areas might help, but it looks like you've had a lot of fun with that painting, so we'll continue on here. This is great, Maria. That is really, really nicely done. So just sort of what we were talking about is just pushing those grays just a little bit darker, just to pump up that contrast, like when we were talking about Vanya's here. Because right now, I mean, this is great, but we have her, like, part of, I think, what makes this painting so bold is that her head is sort of like surrounded by all of this by both the angular mechanical parts of the car, but also these sort of flowing organic scarves and everything. So there's just like this head poking out, which, you know, people have compared to like a pilot in an airplane, like a World War I pilot, like the Red Baron kind of thing, like sitting in this machine, and all you see is this head, you know, covered with goggles and a scarf flowing out. And if you were a pilot flying in a plane next to it, and you look out and you're like, whoa, it just looks like this, like the pilot's body is the plane, right? And I think that's part of what is in this painting, is that it's just like her head is she's become part of the machine in some way. So I think this is a very effective, really well executed painting. And I think, you know, just a little bit of the smoothness of the face I think worked really well. That I think, you know, in Vanya's here, just a little bit of some of those marks in there. And again, not easy to do, but if you want to get better, it's just thinking about, like, just with this specific painting, is just a little bit more smoothness, I think, is something. When I think of Tamara de Lempicka's paintings, especially like in this one, but in other ones, there's a real high contrast between smooth volumes, smooth rendering, and then very hard, angular, metallic surfaces, right? And that is really very common in almost all Art Deco imagery and architecture to be as well, right? Of which she is sort of the most well-known Art Deco artist. Wow. Lori. So Lori says, this is me trying to do the underpainting quickly. It took me most of the day, so I'm worried about losing the lines. What else did? So I can't seem to do it quickly. Interesting. You know, one of the, so that's kind of common, like hearing people talking about being afraid to lose the outlines when you're working on any of these paintings. And often my solution is just to paint things, some of those lines where you know that they're going to be covered by one or more layers of paint, is just to darken them. Just take your paintbrush and just paint over some of those outlines, so that as you paint, those lines are more likely to show through, as opposed to pencil lines, which are more likely just to get covered completely. And sometimes you might have to go over those lines again if you put another layer of paint on there. So that's one solution. The other solution is to allow those lines to get covered, and then to try to go back and paint them even though you've lost them, which is can be frustrating and hard. But I think ultimately you don't want to have to be relying too much on the outlines and trying to and because if the more and more you worry about them, the more stiff the painting gets. We really want to ultimately get to the point where the outlines are just there to help us get the composition roughly in place. And then we start painting, and then the painting takes on its own life. And yes, there's going to be some distortions that are going to happen because of approaching the painting that way. But I would suggest that those distortions is what's going to create more unique paintings, that it's going to force your own style as an artist to develop, right? And that is, I think, ultimately where we want to get to. So the sooner you allow yourself to start painting in that way, it's going to be a little bit rough for sure, absolutely, but it's like any kind of new skill or whatever. At some point, you kind of have to take the training wheels off and just try cycling a little bit without them. And yeah, there might be a few falls and scrapes and a few little tears there, but you'd be surprised at how quickly you will you'll get better, right? And you can only make that happen once you allow some of those lines to start disappearing, and then trying to solve the problems on your own. And it's so satisfying when you pull those things back out that you thought were lost. And then as soon as you have a few of those moments where you've sort of solved that issue, it's a huge confidence booster. And I know that the first few times you do it, probably not going to turn out, and it's going to be deflating, right? So sometimes you do a little bit, take a few steps forward, go a few steps back, a few steps forward, a few steps back, and then once you have that breakthrough moment where you allow yourself to go past the outline, and it works, even though maybe 5-10 times before it failed, the first time it works, you're like, whoa, I can do this. I can really do this. Oh my goodness, right? That's what's so exciting. We're going to move on here. Heidi, beautiful. Wow, that looks great. Right, what I was saying here, the face, great softness in that face. The one thing I would say is maybe darkening some of the fabric, although in this instance, I don't mind it so much. I'm not sure exactly why. I do think, if I recall, the way that she did the I don't know what this is, like, I don't know if there was actually a window on these types of cars, or if this is technically the window, like the visor or whatever on these old cars. But I do recall this being a little bit of a different color. I think I might have painted that a bit cool blue or something. But I think we'd want to have just a little bit more difference between the, because these are objects that we see through this glass. And I think we just want to have it a little, make that separation a little bit more intense. And also, this is the top of the car here, this roof. I think that line extends further back. So I would expect this hood to kind of cut through some of this area, I think. I could be wrong. And it looks like maybe a few other people. Yeah, you can see here Maria's. See that, how that line goes back there like that? I mean, again, I'm always just nitpicking here because I just want to try to help people get to make these paintings as great as possible. And maybe even Heidi, this is a glove that comes through here, so I think it's okay for this part of the glove to be kind of bright and gold, but I think we'd expect under here to be a little bit darker. Same here, because we don't want to confuse the hand with whatever is underneath the steering wheel here. So almost as even if we just had some more gray in here and just a little bit underneath that area would be fine. Even though I think darkening it all quite a lot more would be helpful. Lolly says, these feedback sessions honestly blow my mind at how talented you guys all are. Seriously, these car ones are amazing. Yeah, they're pretty cool, isn't it? Isn't it just sort of blow your mind? Yeah, it does. It blows my mind for sure. Here's Gail's version. Wow, I love, Gail, how you used a totally different color. You used this cool blue as opposed to the green. It looks great. Very, very different. I think one thing is all of this is working quite well. The reflections on the hood of the car, though, I think should probably be parallel to the reflections on the door. So rather than them coming down on this diagonal, I would think that they would continue not straight, but at this like 45-degree angle. Tiny little thing. I think we could put a little bit of some kind of reflection up here. And I don't mind her having a big blue scarf like that. I just think we need to have a little bit more contrast, maybe darker. Try to get a little bit of these folds in here. I mean, tiny little little thing, but that's really cool. And then we'll end here with Eleanor's great job. Wow, that looks really cool. Really well done. And, you know, maybe the same sort of thing I said, maybe having just even just a little bit of dark area in these folds, just to, because there's going to be some parts of the folds that are darker than others. But, I mean, boy, that looks pretty cool. I mean, what is kind of neat about this is I like how the only real sharp lines are right on her face. And maybe the signature. I guess maybe this window piece here. But otherwise, everything has got a little bit more of a nuanced edge. I don't know. I mean, it kind of works here. And you know, I'm sure some people are like, oh, well, you're just saying the opposite. You gave the opposite advice to this person than you did for this person. Like, you're so inconsistent, Michael. Why are you? It's because it's because I try to look at each artwork on its own. And yes, I have trying to compare it a little bit to the original, but I also want to try to, you know, take these artworks, you know, at their face value and appreciate them as they are, and really not try to make them, you know, tie them so strongly to the original. But like, how can we make a version that someone has already made and just make it just that, dial it 5% even better than it already is, without changing it and turning it into something that it's not? But how can we bring out the what's working in each painting? That is, as I think, what we should be focusing on. Not trying to make perfect reproductions, but how can we make what we're doing better, right? I think that would be the distinction that I would want to have here. Okay. How are we doing for time? How about... we'll look at a few more here. And then we're going to start looking at the artworks that you guys did on your own. So, here we're going to look at Bongo. Alright, so this is a book that Bongo the Bear was a book that my mom read when she was a child. And she still has this book. And it was a Sinclair Lewis story that was adapted by Walt Disney during World War II. But I always just thought the cover and this character was so beautiful, and so it's really kind of fun to see people attempting to paint this painting as well. And wow, oh wow! Look at how cool they are. They're all different. Okay, so here's Eleanor's, Heidi's, Leslie's, and Paula's. These are great. You know, Paula, I think this turned out really great. I would say it looks a little bit more chipmunky than it does bear, which is fine. I think it's just because, you know, the body is getting kind of slim, and the face, the nose isn't quite as, you know, doesn't protrude quite as far as, let's say, the original does. I mean, we're talking, you know, minor quibble here. Again, the fact that you drew this from without using outline is better than I think a lot of my fellow peers, my teachers at art school could pull off, right? There's a lot of them that they couldn't draw many of the drawings that you've been able to do. So full respect there. What could I say about? I mean, again, if you did want to make it look a little bit more bear-like, I think having that nose come out just a little bit more. But then that might require you know, some pretty intense surgery to this painting, because I think you'd ultimately want to extend not just the nose, or not, you wouldn't, not even extending the nose, but moving this entire snout outwards, which might mean also changing where this black line is in the middle, and then the nose kind of beginning here, in order to get it a little bit closer to the original character. Now, do I think you should do that? Probably not worth your time to go back and make those adjustments, but just sort of being able to kind of see what's working, and I think it's just, that's all that you really need to know, because you can always do the painting again a second time, and I'm sure that the second time anybody makes any painting, it's going to get better, right? I see lots of comments trickling in here. I'm just going to keep on moving forward. Here's Leslie's painting. Wow, I love that you included the original text on here. And then it also looks like you scraped paint away here. Is that what I'm seeing? Like you scraped the wet paint off using, let's say, maybe the back of your paintbrush. That kind of looks like what's happening there, unless you're using paint to paint, like just a little thin paintbrush to paint. Or maybe that's what you're doing. You're painting a little bit of light color back on top. I think that's what's happening. But it does look like you're scraping paint away, like one might do in an oil painting, which is a pretty common technique. I think this turned out really good. That's great. I think that turned out really well, Leslie. What would I offer as advice? I don't know. I don't know if I have anything. I mean, yeah, like we could have a little more definition in these fingers. Like I feel like maybe the dark outline, I don't know if this is done with a Sharpie or something. I feel like that might have been done a little bit quickly, and maybe just slowing down a little bit would have been helpful, just so we can get a little bit more detail, but it's minor quibble, right? We look at Heidi's here. You know, I see, okay, this is, I was noticing the previous two. So you see this is the other leg of Bongo the bear here, his, I guess his left leg. So we have here's right leg. Here's the right foot. Here's the right knee here, right? And here's his rump and tail, obviously. And then this is his left leg, which is mostly hidden. So I think we can see pretty clearly how Heidi's done this. But I can see a little bit of potentially confusion here with Paula. And so we have this leg here, and then this other one almost appears to be another knee, as if both of these legs are side by side, and we expect to see the other foot right next to it, but the foot's down here. So I think there's a little, I think just a minor confusion. And we see it, yeah, we also see it here in Leslie's here, this other foot kind of happening here. And, you know, obviously, you know, I make those mistakes myself in some of these paintings. I don't even, because I'm just painting away, my nose is right in the painting, and I'm painting away, and I think it looks all great, and then I take it upstairs, put it on the mantle, and then I'm sitting like, oh, how did I miss that? Like, it looks like the arm is coming out of the ear or some kind of, and often that's just because when we're painting these paintings, we're right in it, and it's hard to see the whole thing, which is why it's a really great idea to kind of put the painting across the room and just to look at it. You've seen in movies, you know, these kind of scenes where there's the genius artist just sitting there on the chair, often smoking a cigarette, because of course, right? And they're looking at their painting, and you know, the camera comes in, and they're usually not painting at all, they're just looking at the canvas. And so that's, you know, a cliched scene or portrayal of an artist, but it comes about because artists should do that a lot. Artists should step back and just look at the artwork for a long period of time, especially before putting some of those final marks, or while putting finishing marks on. Now, I probably, because I'm trying to do these things live, me putting the painting on the other side of the room and looking at it for half an hour, 45 minutes, doesn't usually make for really entertaining, compelling programming. So I kind of skip over that part during the episodes where I myself am painting. But I do think that would be a pretty good strategy for most people watching right now to consider doing, is that when you get close to the end of the painting, you know, usually, like when I'm filming my show here and I'm at that last 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and I'm just doing a little fiddling, and I'm like, oh, my stomach's starting to growl, that would usually be the time where instead of finishing the painting, if I was working, I would be like, you know what, I'm just gonna like wash up a little bit, go and have dinner, and then come back fresh and look at it. I might even take that painting upstairs so it's sitting there while I'm eating. Or maybe not. Maybe just getting a little bit of space so that it's not right in front of me all the time. And then coming back maybe the next day or a week later and taking a look at it. And then a lot of artists literally turn the canvas against the wall so they can't see it. And then after a certain period has elapsed, turn the canvas back the other way so they can see it. And then often they're like, whoa, now I can see everything so much clearly. Things that I didn't even notice, I'm seeing them. Things that I was fixated on as problems, they've gone away. So I think that might be, you know, it's so maybe I made that same mistake in my painting. I don't know. But I think, you know, sometimes that's why it's helpful having somebody else like myself to take a look at the art, because they're seeing it for the first time and they're like, oh, I see a little, I'm confused by something there. And I think the responsibility of artists is to help clarify things for the viewer, right? To make those problems less apparent, I guess. Okay, wow, lots of comments there. So, just looking, what am I going to say? This looks great, Eleanor. Wow, I love, again, you know, this is something I suggested we do because we painted this kind of like, I think, a cool yellow, or just a yellow with some white in it. And then we painted a more intense yellow without any white or very little white, so that we get this very subtle glow around the figure, and it works really well. I think Heidi did that as well. Leslie did that as well. Don't quite see that here in Paula's version, but I think we see it most strikingly, at least in the way it's photographed, in Eleanor's painting here. And I think even just adding that little highlight on the knee here is really effective. We have a little bit of it here very subtly with Heidi's. I think, you know, Leslie and Paula might benefit from even more of that, potentially. Okay. Let's look at maybe one more of these. The Botero. There's only a few images of Botero here. And then we'll take a look at all the great art that you guys have been making recently. So, that's awesome. And then Paula's, of course, here. Wow. Okay, so Paula's, this is great. Wow. This is really cool. Like the way that you've done the face here, like we've got the same, you know, we talked a little bit about noses earlier. The way that we have this highlight, but it's the same color as the rest of the face, of some of the parts of the cheeks and the forehead where the light is hitting it. So keeping it bright like that, I think, is, in this case, works fairly well. I think we may even want to make this side just a little bit darker, maybe. What else? You may want to think about putting little shadows by those apples too. And then here's Eleanor's version. That looks great. those clouds and everything. I do think that there was a shadow in this painting that I think would serve both of you kind of well. And even getting a little bit of a shadow underneath the jacket on the legs, you know, in the folds of the pants here. I think there was like a little, I think the way I did it was just a little bit of a glaze, darker glaze underneath these feet to help just make the body stand on that surface. You know, a lot of the times artists don't put shadows on their figures, and it just creates this thing where the person appears to be sort of floating in space. As soon as we add a shadow there, it tells us a lot about the environment. It tells us where the light is coming from, what time of day, or even what season it might be. It tells us, is the person in fact floating, or are they touching the ground? Because if the shadow is touching the person, then that's usually because the person is physically on the ground. If they were jumping up in the air, then the shadow would be detached from the body, and then we might have a shadow on the ground, right? So, and all that sounds maybe kind of obvious, and why would you want someone floating? But maybe you do want to have a painting of someone jumping up in the air, or falling, or whatever, right? But this looks really good. I would say, Eleanor, this is an excellent painting, and I think it could be really one of your best if you just took that extra little bit of time just to glaze a little darker color in a few of these. I mean, it looks like you've done a bit of it, but I think it just that a little bit more would make a major difference. And I love the way you did the texture on this jacket. I don't even know if I did the stars on the Matador's cape here. Really nice. Wow. Whew, you guys. Okay. Let me see. Oh, I see Sandra says, "Hi friends, I just got my booster and I'm feeling a bit feverish. I'm excited for this feedback episode." Let me see. Ravi says, "I never did portrait painting in my life. I have done lots of still life, nature, birds, animals, etc., and lots of landscapes and abstract things. Great job to all the portrait painters." Awesome. Cool. So let's next I'm gonna end here at where Giuseppe Arcimboldo's paintings begin. So that'll be where we'll pick up when we do one of these episodes again, probably in early January. So if you haven't done Arcimboldo, let me see here. This is the artist. This is Gemini's version of this painting, but we're not going to talk about it right now. But this was a little bit of a challenging one because there's a lot of detail in there. But if you are thinking at some point of doing that I would sort of, because we're going to look at that, and then we're going to look at the Aaron Douglas, Tyler Rator, Taib Mehta, Saeed Haydarraza, and then a bunch of the Picasso paintings, right? The old guitarist, all that kind of stuff, Nikki de Saint-Phal, Mickey Mouse, that's all coming up in the next episode. So, let's look at the work that you guys have been doing. Okay, opening up a ton of these all at once. So we looked at this painting by Kathy right off the top at the very beginning of the episode. So I'm not gonna, I mean, I guess, you know, she's saying that this is one of my very first paintings I ever did. If this is where you're beginning, Kathy, holy smokes, it's so exciting to think of where you're going to be if you continue painting along with us, right? I mean, this is a great start. Wow, that's very exciting. Let's continue on here. Maybe I'll do a few from the top, and then I'll jump to the bottom and work my way up from the bottom, just so the people who've got last names that start with Z. Don't have to always wait to the very end of the discussion. Sandra says, have you looked at the Edward Hopper ones yet? No, we haven't looked at Edward Hopper yet. That won't be till next, maybe not even next episode, the one after probably. Just because there's so much art, which is the best problem to have, is when when you guys have contributed so many artworks to the community, that it takes a while to go through all of them, at least to do them. I could just flip through all of them and we could be done here in 20 minutes, but it would almost sort of defeat the whole point, right? And I'm sure you appreciate and understand that, Sandra. So here's Eleanor. This is great. Eleanor did a few of these with cactuses. That's awesome. Oh my goodness. Wow. And then Eleanor did a few here made her own Christmas cards this year. That's pretty inspiring. Wow. And this guitar piece on Earth. So let's just take, maybe I'll just take a look at a bunch of yours here. I love this. Is this something that you created on your own, or is this inspired by someone's work? That is really nice. I love the way that you painted these cactuses down here. The sun, you know, there's kind of maybe a bit of a Van Gogh thing, but who else does that really remind me of? Maybe it's just your own style is really developing here. Like using all of these nice colors to outline, like the reds and the yellows and pinks, really just makes this just have so much life and energy in here. I'm really, really excited. That's really great. And then this one is a lot more like realistic, or you know, maybe a little bit less expressive with the color, but still has a lot of personality here. I would probably expect maybe more people would appreciate this one than the other one, even though I really like the other. I mean, I love it when I see more unique expressions of color. Not to say that I don't think this is unique, but because I think there's certainly a lot of skill involved in a painting like this. I guess I just find like this makes me think, wow, this is a little bit more different than what anyone else has done, right? Although the beautiful colors in here, the contrast between these greens and these darker blues and greens, that's awesome. Really nice paintings, Eleanor. And these Christmas cards, so exciting. I love these flourishes here. Wow. Great. Love the guitarist too. That is fun. Oh, I guess the one thing I would say, and I sound really nitpicky, but there is I'm a little confused, because what this is telling me is that when I see this, that means I'm seeing part of the side of the guitar. Like here, it looks like I'm looking at the guitar directly from the front, so I can't see any of the side shape of the guitar, but here we have the side of the guitar. So I'm expecting to either see a little bit more of the guitar here, but then I also feel like I'm seeing part of the bottom of the neck of the guitar. So there's a little confusion, because if I see the bottom of the guitar neck, how would I do I have anything I can... I don't have a guitar down here, but if you... Yeah, it's kind of held like this, right? So I feel like I'm seeing part of the bottom of this shape here. But then to see the guitar shaped down here, it makes me think that this would actually be rotated the opposite way. So if I'm seeing a number of contradictory points of view of this guitar. Not a big deal, but maybe that if you might have been having some kind of sometimes as artists we look at a picture and we're like, there's something about my painting that I'm not working. I don't understand what it is, and maybe it's just the colors, or I don't like the way it did the fingers. And often it has nothing to do with something like that. It might be something else entirely. Otherwise, like, great, really good. Now, Gail said, I've been busy doing Southwest themes when in Rome. So maybe Gail's on vacation in the Southwest. Is that down in George O'Keeffe country here, and as making some paintings of the landscape here? Like, this particularly has a very George O'Keeffe quality. Really nice. These beautiful colors in these paintings. Really cool job. Awesome, Gail. Or maybe you're traveling and you're down south, or maybe it's because it's cold that you're like, you know what, I'm just going to use painting to transport myself to a warmer climate. Which is a great, when it's snowing outside, and if you go into your house and you're making paintings of palm trees and beaches and deserts and camels next to the pyramids and stuff, that might provide a little bit of extra warmth if you're surrounding yourself by that type of imagery. And like, no kidding, as opposed to by constantly painting cold pictures when it's cold, it might make you feel a little bit cold. Let's skip down here. So here's a photo that Heidi, my neighbor accidentally saw my paintings of my cat, then commissioned me to paint her dog for her son as a Christmas present. So here's the resulting painting from this photograph. And I think this is awesome. I love this painting. I will say that the background is kind of undefined, this kind of orangey space that the dog is floating around in. But the dog is so well painted that I'm very forgiving of that kind of thing, because it becomes kind of irrelevant. It's sort of like, it just becomes part of our peripheral vision. I mean, would it be nice to see what this dog is sitting on? And it doesn't have to be this couch and this blanket. It could be a throne or a plinth or an important book that is meaningful to the dog's owner, etc. Lots of different ways you can go about it. I don't mind it so much. I guess it's just a little. I always just, or even if we had these vertical lines up here, but where the dog is laying, all of a sudden these lines go diagonal or something, so that it appears that there's like a space that the dog is on, right? We have this kind of like the chair that we were talking about earlier in the Mondrian and Elijah Clark painting. I just the way that you've painted these hairs in here, really excellent job, Heidi. Really, really proud of you. Very exciting. And then this starts to become a bit of a business possibility there too, doesn't there? Heidi says, my neighbors provided me their toy photos to add. I see. That could be pretty fun. I mean, I also think maybe it's worth doing a second painting rather than painting on that other one again. Possibly. I mean, it's hard to say. I also, again, I don't want to just start like, well, you got to like go and change and fix the painting. Anyway, I'm going to move on here. Heidi says, my daughter came home to her room nicely surprised. These are her two favorite paintings from Matthew Wong's exhibition at the AGO recently. That is cool. Your daughter must be so proud of you, Heidi, to like come back and see that you have you didn't just go buy some prints from the gallery shop or whatever, which is nothing wrong with that. But the fact that you made these paintings, you reproduced her two favorite paintings from that exhibition, and then you framed them and hung them on her wall, Like, that's amazing, right? And I think that should be really inspiring to other people who are watching. You know, let's say you go for coffee with a friend, right? And they say something like, you're walking down the street and they say, oh, look at that beautiful, I love how they, this new display in the Macy's window here. What a beautiful thing. And you're like, oh, let me just take a quick photograph of that. That's cool. Little do they know that you're listening for possible things, images that you could make, that you could give them as a birthday present or a Christmas present or anniversary present or something, right? And if you have in that mind, like, okay, I'm going to make 5 paintings this year, and I'm going to give them to my 5 closest friends or family members, sons, daughters, parents, etc. And you just say, like, I'm going to do 5 of these. And then as every conversation that comes up, you're just thinking, like, if they talk about something that's important to them that you want to take a photograph, or afterwards you can do a little bit of research, and then later on they're opening up a present from you, and they're just like, their mind would explode. That would be so exciting. So I'm sure your daughter just lost her mind with that. That's really cool. I'm going to move on here because there's lots of paintings to cover here. You can see 112 of these images here. Here's Joshua's version of a head from Easter Island. That turned out awesome. Again, it looks like there's the way that there's light on there is, I'm sure this is much darker here underneath the brow. Pope Julius II. Is that, I'm trying to think who did that original painting. El Greco or something. Again, all that light on there makes it a little bit hard to see what the painting would have looked like originally. But I think the face is a little bit greenish and yellow. I think having a bit more pink, some magenta colors, and then some warmer colors in there just to see would be, even just sort of like little light glazes over top of that, might be give a little bit more warmth and put some blood back into this face. So it starts looking a little bit corpse-like. Like we have, I see that on the hands, and so I think we just want to match the hands to the face. Another Joshua one here. That turned out really well. I like this, how that one looks really, that's a great little study. That's really nice. I just want to show a few. Here's another person who's just joined us recently, Judy. This is the Emily Carr painting. I love this, Judy. This is great. I think this is better than the version I did. I love, like, this is, you've really, I don't know how long you've been painting, Judy, but this style that you're using here is really nice. Like, that's a really cool painting. So I would love to see you doing more of this, whether it's looking at Emily Carr and painting more Emily Carr paintings, or, you know, painting more of your own things. These look, that's really cool, Judy. This is your version of the Lauren Harris painting. Gorgeous. I enjoyed this, but I found it much more time intensive than I anticipated. You know, often that happens once you get into a painting. You're like, oh, this is a commitment I just got myself into, isn't it? And there's been a few of those that I've been surprised at once I got started. But having said that, when you do accomplish it, I mean, you got to be pretty proud of yourself for having made a painting like that, right? I mean, that's the danger. Once you start making a few paintings and they start looking pretty good, you're like, oh no, what have I done to myself? Now I can't stop. Here's Judy's version of the Henri Matisse. That is really nice. What I like about these, I wonder, are these all acrylic, or are these, some of these look almost like gouache, as a material to paint with, because the colors are so thick and intense. That looks really cool. Really nicely, the way the fish in here are kind of glowing almost. And this is one of my favorite paintings that we did, the Chrysophili, in celebration of the London Olympics in 2012. And you did a great job here. Wow. And these looks like you're all doing them on paper too, so really nicely done. Here's Leslie. We looked at a few of Leslie's at the very beginning here. So Leslie did this Whistler's mother. Remember we did this episode probably in the summer. Looks great. I guess the only thing I would say is some of these marks over here look a little bit like an afterthought. So just sort of maybe being a little bit more careful. Maybe even if we just had a bit of glazing fluid in them, just so they're not quite so white. So they're just a little bit more subtle. I think that would have been really nice. Lorenzo, again, relatively new to the group here. Here's the Warhol banana one that we did. I like how you even added the Peel Slowly and See, that was on the original album cover for the Velvet Underground, the band that this was designed for. So I love that you added that. And then you did a version here. This is, you had Jean-Michel Basquiat style. It was like Warhol as the banana. I don't know if this is actually a Basquiat painting or you just did this in the style of Basquiat, but it's definitely fun. Now we're look at Maria's here. So that is cool. So this one she did inspired by Pierre Mondrian, who did a whole bunch of studies of trees, and then she wasn't so happy with it. I thought it was pretty good, but then did a sort of reworked it a little bit more and added to it. And I do think that it did make a huge improvement. So what we see, I think you've thinned down the tree a little bit, added some volume underneath here, and I think even also just rounded it all out. And when we see this, I mean, I think this is okay, but it does look very simple, right? It just sort of looks like it's almost too I don't know. I was going to say it looks too simple and too balanced, but this one is even more balanced. But I think it's just I feel like there's something about the tapering of the trunk here that helps. Having a little bit of different approaches to painting these greens that seems even more effective. So what makes me really excited about something like that is that you did the painting and then felt like there was something more that could be done. Okay. So let's look. Here's Pascal's. He added a whole bunch of paintings here. He's been working on these small, I think 5x7 canvases. So very small canvases, right? We're talking canvases probably about that big, about the size of a larger postcard, I would say, right? And has been doing a bunch of his own explorations of different artists. So here's the Claude Monet. I like this one a lot. I think you did a great job. The one thing I would say is if we had maybe I see a bit of this warmer blue in the foreground. I think even more of it, right? Because what we've got right up here is a lot of cooler blues and cool greens. And I think we want to have a bit more warmer blues as we get closer to the foreground. Same sort of thing, almost the opposite is having cooler oranges and cooler reds in the background, and then keeping these warmer colors up front. And that's just my suggestion in terms of using warm and cool colors. And Monet used that as well. So it's not like I'm telling you something that would be contrary or contradict the original image, but I think applying a bit of warm colors for foreground, cool colors for background, which we've done many times, would be kind of a good experiment for you, perhaps. Pascal's first attempt at this Claude Monet. That is interesting. It's almost like painted in a bit of a Bob Ross style here, where we have this particular kind of dry brush techniques and almost like a sponge or something to get some of this texture. It is definitely very different than the way Monet would have painted. I do want to do a whole week on Monet in the new year, but there's still plenty of other things I got to get to before we get there, but I think that'll be kind of fun to build back up. We have done a Monet painting in the past, but it might be nice to explore a little bit further because it looks like you're certainly interested in him. Okay, so here's your second attempt. I like this one. This one is better for sure. Again, it looks like you're using some type of a sponge or something to get all of this texture, which is not, there's nothing wrong with using a sponge. I think for me though, I will say that the sponge, you know, Bob Ross uses a sponge, and I'm a big Bob Ross fan, but it's also used a lot in like children's art to really quickly give effects. And I guess, you know, what do I say about that kind of thing? I guess if you're in a big hurry, it's okay to use whatever techniques are gonna like speed the process along as quickly as possible. But I think it might be helpful to try to use a little bit more traditional painting approaches. And I don't want to sound like an old dinosaur who's against, you know, using alternative methods of painting. It's just that those, like a sponge is so tied, it's so wrapped up in, it has a lot of baggage, I guess, that it's hard for me as someone who's been looking at and making art for so long to not get beyond that, I guess. So that's just what I'm you know, maybe that's just all about me and my own hang up, so take it or leave it for sure. Cool. I love how you've got all three of these Picasso paintings in one here, like they're all hanging out at the same bar or something. That is cool. That turned out pretty well. I like that. I like this. It's interesting, this line that kind of continues through them that helps join them literally together. Very creative. I like that. Pascal also did this one, this Inuit style bear. Very cool. Yeah, I'm not particularly an expert on this type of work at all. This is interesting. A Matisse. I'm not familiar with this Matisse painting at all. That's interesting. I love the colors in that. That is one bright sunset. That is wild. Huh. You know, it's interesting, like, you're painting on these very small canvases, and it is quite impressive what you're able to get out of these small canvases. But the one thing is, when you paint really small, is it can hide a lot of difficulties or problems, kind of thing. And which, you know, is for many people exactly what they want to do, because you want to make the best painting possible. So making very small paintings is going to probably be very satisfying, because there's only so much you can do on a small surface. But the thing is, I think when we're trying to learn, it is maybe counterproductive in some ways, because then it's harder for you to see the areas that you really need to work on to get stronger. Like I see this all the time when I'm teaching in person. Students will show up with these literally tiny sketchbooks, right? So they'll get like sketchbooks that are not much bigger than a phone, right? And they're trying to do drawings. And often when we bring models into the classroom and we're trying to draw from a model, I'll recommend having a large like notepad, paper, newsprint pad, and drawing with charcoal and standing up and drawing. And these students with these little sketchbooks, you know, it's all these little wrist movements. And I remember teachers when I was in school talking about like trying to get away from the wrist and activate the whole arm when you're painting or drawing, because first of all, it's going to be ultimately much better for your hand. You're less likely to develop carpal tunnel when you're like 20 years old if all you're doing is just holding the brush, but then you're using your whole arm. Our arms are way more stronger than our wrists are, right? So often when I hear people like, oh, I was painting for a couple of hours and my hands are so sore, I think what that sounds like is you're painting and drawing really, really small, and then you're doing all these little movements like this, where ultimately instead, if you're painting with your whole arm and your arm is floating over the surface or in front of the canvas, yeah, maybe for the first month your arm is going to be really sore, but eventually it gets stronger and you're also going to be able to do more, and you're less likely eventually to be so tired afterwards. Anyway, but this is, I really like this. I think this might be my favorite. Well, there was that other Monet at the beginning I really liked as well. That's a really nice version of Dali. And having said all that, Dali is famous for his, I mean, many of his greatest paintings are very small. So, you know, if you think of The Persistence of Time, which I think you did a version of, if I just scroll here. So you did this version of the Dali, and that paint, the original one, is about the size of a regular photocopy sheet of paper. It is small. So that, you know, it's pretty amazing that you've also done such a great job on such a small surface. I love the way you did these mountains and the reflection of the water back there. That is really nice. That is really, really nice. That's very exciting. I'm just going to scroll back up here. I want to kind of move. You've done a lot of work, Pascal, so I don't want to shortchange you, but I do want to move on to some other people here. Like, that is really nice. That turned out really great. That's a really, really, really nice Monet. And I think you know it's a great painting because you put a frame on it. So that's great. That's great to see. And the more that we're hanging our artworks up, then the more likely it is that we're going to feel the great benefits and the satisfaction for making great paintings. That's also really nice. So this is one of my early ones. It's a Cezanne, but using the wrong style. Yeah, but I think it turned out really well. I also really like that I got these pinks and things in here, and as part of maybe an underpainting. That is also working really nice. This Van Gogh, that turned out pretty well. You really got down in here these colors that Van Gogh uses a lot. These sort of peachy, pinky, orangey colors that we see a lot in these browns that we see a lot of his paintings. That's really nice that you're able to effectively mix those. Really great. This is a really strong one as well. Great to see this too. We did this painting a couple months ago. Really nice. When we did this one, I did mention to a few people about trying to kind of lighten this area. That's what we were talking at the very beginning with Heidi's, is just to get a little bit of white and maybe even cool yellow, just to kind of have a little bit of variety of light and have a little more intense light source right around the light and as it spills out onto the street. And I don't know if there was that white that you put in there. This Picasso, that turned out great. Oh, you're like a little machine here cranking these out, Pascal. These are great. that turned out really well. This is the Rêve, La Rêve, or the Dream. We're going to be doing this painting, I think, in February of next year. So you got a head start on that. This turned out really well. Really great job. Wow, look at these. I love this. I love how you've got this little hand-painted frame around it and then your name on the bottom. Really nice. This is one of the later Picassos here. Dora Maar. Oh no, this is Mary Therese. Wow, look how small that little canvas is. That's great. And all of these, the brickwork here. The sunflowers. He did a whole series of different Van Gogh sunflowers. These are also really, really nice. Especially, I think it's this one. You nailed Van Gogh's style there. Wow, that is great. And I also really like one of the things that when I'm looking at the way people paint Van Gogh paintings, I usually look straight at the backgrounds to see how well they did that, because usually people sort of think of it as a bit of an afterthought, whereas you've clearly, you know, looked at it closely enough to try to get some of those details. These are all really fantastic, Pascal. Really, really proud of you for all of these. Wow, that's great too. So I don't really have, you know, you're keeping yourself busy, and there's certainly lots of episodes if you want to go back and watch any of the other ones or use any of the other images from the Dropbox folder. Plenty to keep you busy. So glad to have you joining our community here. So I'm going to move on here and look at Paula's. These are beautiful, Paula. Look at these fish, especially like this one down here. I like these kind of circles and motif down there. And this fish looks like it's jumping out of the water. Like that looks to me like this is the horizon and some trees and a mountain or something there. And then this one I think is so beautiful, Paula. I love these flowers, this vase, these purples. Wow. That's a really nice one. That turned out really well. And then I think you posted, I don't know if it was several versions of this horse. I've added some acrylic over the grass, the river, and pop. I like it. Cool. So it was like a watercolor that you did a little bit of extra work to. Very cool. I like that. And this boat. Excuse me. I like that a lot. I really like the way you painted this boat. It feels very sculptural. Like it makes me. It looks like it's made. It's like a boat, like out of wire or tin or something. That is really nice. I like this. The one thing is this area on the left feels a little bit, and even this area feels like I wonder. That's okay, but this looks like to me that this is another landmass, and I feel like I want to see something else here. Maybe a big tree there. We looked at this one at the beginning. I love that one a lot. That turned out really nice. That Stuart Davis one was a little bit more difficult than I think even I expected it to be, even though I thought it might be difficult, but you turned that into a pretty good job. And these ones are really nice. You've got some of this bird. Great. And this orca. That is wild. Is that a collage? Oh, wow. What am I looking at here? How did you do that? So it's like tissue paper or something? Huh. Oh yeah, this is right up here. Using tissue papers to form texture in the background. Oh, interesting. Huh. I like that. That is wild. That is pretty cool. I love using that mixed media. Okay, so here was the horse. The original version, and here's version 2. Yeah, version 2 I think is better. Yeah, it does make a huge improvement, doesn't it? Okay, and Peter is moving back to Vancouver from Montreal and will be a little bit more active with us again. So this is one of the paintings he made this year. He's been pretty busy, but I love this one. He gave it as a present. Wow, and here's Ravi. I'm sorry, I don't know if there was the post here, but these are, I think, a bunch of paintings that you or your son has been painting recently, right? Wow. That's awesome. So, wow, that's cool. I like this. This is Tom Thompson, I'm pretty sure. And then that's your interpretation of it. That is really nice. That is great. I love this painting, Ravi. I mean, I like the original, but I dare say that this is starting to approach that same sort of place. And what I think is really effective is, you know, you've got this kind of peachy colors in the background that you applied as like the underpainting, and then you painted the trees, and then, like a lot of the group of 7 members, painted the sky over top of all of that. So now we've got these glowing areas around the trees. It's just gorgeous. That is fantastic. Might be my favorite painting that you've done there. Really cool. This is Richard Hodel. Yeah. It turned out pretty good as well. Norval Morisot. Wow, you said this is my 9-year-old son did this painting last year. That's cool. So you got some artists in the family, Ravi. That is cool. And I think, so this is the original. And then here it is up on above the fireplace. That's awesome. I love that. I would love to see this whole mantle just covered with all of your paintings that you've been working on. Like, don't be afraid to start putting those paintings up, showing them around your house, lending them to friends and family, or giving them away as presents. Get them out of the house. Sell them. Yeah, it's great. This is what your 10-year-old son did last week. Wow. Turned out great. I mean, we did whole episodes on. We did an episode on this particular painting, Starry Night. So I can't, you know, if you want to see a little bit more about how to maybe get even closer to the original, but these turned out really good. I would say again, that makes me really, really excited. If this is what you're capable of doing now, man, if we really continue to develop, it's just going to get better and better and better. Now here's Sandra's Giorgio O'Keeffe. I love these tiny little paintings as a study. That is awesome. And you know, one of the things that artists have done for centuries is doing a little color study like this before starting a larger painting. So because you're doing something like this, what you end up doing is just mixing what we call the local colors. So just getting what that red is, getting what the background colors are. And then, of course, you can modify and dial in as you go more on a larger canvas. But for many people, just being able to do this acts like the key to solving a much larger version of it. So that's why artists do these little studies. Wow, that looks great. I did this one for a few extra days. You should feel pretty happy about how that turned out, Sandra. I like it a lot. That was not an easy one. We're going to look here at Sandy's. So Sandy did a number of videos of their paintings as well, which I think is cool. So I just took some screenshots of them at different stages. So here's when you were painting it, and at night. We looked at this one of your studio as you're going through some of the early episodes. So some people watching remember what it was like to be back there working on these. Ooh, I like that. That is cool. That's all of these are some of the paintings we made like 2 years ago almost. Wow, I'm just gonna keep on plowing ahead here just because of time. I think I got about another 20 paintings to go through here. So here's Sandra's, or no, Sharon, sorry. A couple of paintings by Sharon. Wow. So this one is a Christmas angel for my granddaughter. And, oops, this is Christmas angel for my grandson. That is awesome. I love the idea of making paintings for family and friends, and surprising them, and being able to have that painting in your family for generations to come is really, really cool, right? And I think it's really, especially for like young kids, to see like paintings by their grandparents. It will like forever sort of change that child's impression of who their grandparents are. Oh, my grandma or grandfather, he's the painter, right? Even if their whole lives they worked as lawyers or whatever, that painting, for all that child knows, is that grandparent is like the world's most successful artist, right? And gives them permission to then explore art or be more creative in their own lives, right? Because they feel like it's a part of like a family tradition almost. And that, don't underestimate the importance of encouragement when it comes to young people. So I really like this painting. I also think that is really beautiful too. I wonder, this looks like some sort of metallic ink in here, and it's really kind of paying off really well. It looks really nice for the sky. Looks like it's a fairly smallish painting, otherwise your signature is really big on there. And I'm not sure, is that, looks like, or maybe the page is folded over. I wonder if that's from like a children's book or something. I'm going to continue on here, Shelley. So that's the painting. This is the photo that it's based on. That's cool. You know, I was just going to say, what I'd like here is that you added a bit of the sky. So that we have a little bit of the, we see a bit of the tops of the trees in the sky in here that we also see the reflection of. As opposed to this picture, where we don't really, it's not quite clear. Like, I guess they're on a dock, and this could be water, but we don't, and this is probably where the water meets the ground, you know, the shoreline right here, but we don't see the sky. And there's this guy walking by with maybe a cigarette in his hand, and I think it was a really smart idea to make the changes that you made here in this painting. The one thing I would say, and we see it in the photograph, so you're certainly, you didn't do anything wrong, but it's in the photograph we have, you know, this dog's ear kind of comes up right underneath this chin. And so in the photograph we just take it as that just makes sense. But when we try to make that painting, now it does this, we almost have a weird optical illusion where this positive shape of the dog in the foreground becomes the negative shape for the underneath the dog. So it kind of makes us wonder, like, if this is the neck, or, you know, the chin of this dog, and that's the neck. I know it sounds, maybe it's a little bit bizarre, maybe not everybody can see that, but if I was to make this painting, I would probably have moved one of these dogs a little bit further out of the way to prevent that dog from just sort of appearing like they're kind of interlocked like puzzle pieces in a kind of a bit of a strange way. That's just a little bit of, I'm always looking for that kind of thing, especially if I'm working from a photograph, because you can paint it and it looks exactly like the photograph, like you've done, but unless you're going to hang the original photograph next to the painting or drawing, then the painting has to stand on its own, right? You can't just be, every time people are looking at that painting, show up over their shoulder and go like, oh, by the way, that's, you know, if you're thinking that looks a little weird, that's because the photo looked kind of weird, just so you know. People are going to be like, what? Who are you? Oh, right? So you're not always available to be there to inform people of why the painting looks the way it does. So in the same way that you were really smart to include the tops of the trees here and get rid of the guy walking by with the cigarette, it does, I think, it might be worth just thinking about that same sort of thing with that ear. Again, I know I'm kind of ranting a little bit on that, but I just think it's worth mentioning. Susan, that's fantastic. Did we see an earlier version of this? I feel like we did. That is gorgeous. I love how this is done. I love these trees, these birch trees. Wow, that is really cool. I think the one thing I would say is maybe some of these leaves appear to have been done very, very quickly, and maybe just slowing down in that area a little bit more, because it looks like a lot of these brush strokes are going in this direction, right? And I think leaves don't all go in that direction. I think we would probably see them pointing in all sorts of different directions. I mean, just giving it that little bit more complexity. Again, I'm just nitpicking, but I think this is, first of all, a really great composition, and I could see you doing more paintings with the same motif again in the future. Really like that. Here's Todd, a new member of the group. Very cool. I like that version of this painting a lot. I wonder if there's maybe there is that, I was going to say, I wonder if there's the cool red we put down, but I see a hint of it around the edges, so that turned out really nice. Great to see some new work in there, Todd. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see you do more of these. And then I can't remember, I was looking at the Instagram page because there was some people that posted a few things there. So I'm not sure if we've looked at some of these ones by Vanya before or not. It is a little confusing when people post to the Facebook group and also send me things through Instagram. So that's always so much easier if everything is just in the same place, because it took me about 6 hours to organize all of these images for today's episode. I used to do them, people send me them on Twitter and all that kind of stuff as well. And then I was like, you know what? I gotta do some boundaries here, otherwise all of the stuff that I'm not being paid for, I only have so much free time, right? So all of these here, that's awesome. That's a really cool volcano one that we did a while ago, right? Here's Vanya's Van Gogh. These are all really great. This turtle one is, that one gave me fits, and I think you did a better job with that turtle than I did. Wow, that turned out great as well. And is that yours, or is that the original? This looks like the original Van Gogh. That'll be a good one to do. Great Mona Lisa. Kathleen Munn. Wow. These are great. Okay. So, we could keep on going because there are lots and lots of more paintings that you guys have done. Those are all of the ones that you guys have done on your own that you uploaded to the Facebook group. I always try to make sure I get all of those in, but obviously You know, we only got all the way up to, we finished Botero, so Arcambaldo, you know, that's episode 70, and we're at like 100. So there's like 30 more paintings between that and where we are today. So we still need to do a little bit more catching up. But the one benefit of giving it a little bit more time is as people join, and there's a lot of people who've been painting with me for years who are, you know, still working on a painting from a few months ago, and not everyone is painting exactly on every, you know, during the sessions we're painting. So it just gives everyone a little bit of time to catch up. So, wow. Well, I think that's probably enough for today. So in next week, as we lead up to Christmas, we're going to be doing a David Milne painting in celebration of his birthday, which is right around the corner. We're going to do a Robert Indiana, very famous, The Love image. We're going to be doing a couple of Rene Magritte paintings, Jacques-Louis David painting. Lots of really cool stuff coming down the pipeline just over the next few weeks, because we have the holidays, so we got a little bit of extra time to get a little bit more done. And I know some of you are going to be very, very busy over the next few weeks and won't have time to watch or paint along with me. And then I know there's a bunch of you that, because of the restrictions, and are not able to travel and might be by yourself over the holidays. So I invite you to paint along with me. I know, just speaking from personal experience. I don't, my own family, we were supposed to go away for Christmas. We were supposed to go visit my in-laws, but because of the fifth wave, or I don't know, whatever wave we're on right now, that was just canceled today. So I'm going to be here in the studio doing a lot of painting over the next few weeks, so you're welcome to join me. And if you don't have any other family to spend the holidays with, then I'm happy to have you join my family and spend a little bit of Christmas with us. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. If you like today, please consider leaving a donation. There's a link to the PayPal down below. You could use a donation through the super chat function here on YouTube, and if you also want to send a check or e-transfer, there's my email through the Facebook group or through the my website. All of those links are down there somewhere. Okay, everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening and happy holidays. We'll see you guys in a few days, and stay warm wherever you are. It's freezing cold and snowing here in Canada. So if you're somewhere where it's not snowing, you have a lot to be grateful for this time of year. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you guys in a very few short days. Until then, we'll talk to you soon. Good night, everybody.